You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 394, The Monster of Temple Peak. It's been a few weeks since we've actually had a chance to talk about the High Republic, and so we thought, given that this was just wrapping up, we just got the fourth issue. Well, it was last week when we were supposed to record this, but figured now would be a good time to kind of give everybody an update on why this story, and I think that's kind of what we're going to try to dig into the most when we start breaking that down. So, and speaking of socks, I don't know. I had nothing there. Welcome to the show, Jonesy. Jonesy's with us once again, and he does have socks that we verified, and I understand they're a specific kind of sock.
Yeah, I got some Star Wars socks from a White Elephant gift, and so and they were actually really inexpensive too. Usually, when you go buy the Star Wars type of things, are like marked up $20 or whatever, and like 5 pairs for $11. I think is what they were. Now they're super thin, but yeah, it's always practical, folks. Like, you want to pull back the curtain a little bit. So what it is like I'm standing.
Whoa!
I'm standing up. Yeah, right. Yeah, keep your pants on, literally. So I'm standing up this time, and I put down one of those mats you have in the kitchen. But my bare feet make noise when I move around it, so you get it picked up on the mic. And if you have socks on, you don't pick it up. So you're welcome.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. For full disclosure, we were starting a few minutes late, and I'd messaged the group saying, "Hey, we'll be back. We'll be starting here just shortly." Jonesy had to get socks on, so we couldn't throw that out there without giving you the detail in the background. Now you know, and I think we're all better because of it. So thank you for sharing all that with me.
Yeah, anything we could do to relate to our friends out there. And I didn't have the antlers on like I promised. I apologize.
Oh yeah, that's kind of a letdown. I know there were people waiting. Look, there are people dropping right now from the live stream because
I know. Well, they were wanting antlers. They were
totally.
So by the time I left that thing last night, like one of the antlers was like down here. It was really sad. It was broken. I didn't break it.
What was it? Paper?
No,
foam?
They were just like the the little things that clip over the top of your head. It was like a little it was like a little holiday party we were having, and but yeah, I had antlers, but one of them had broken, so it was very sad.
Yep. No, I saw you. You did look sad.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the news before we get into the monster at the end of this book. Let's see. So listeners want to know something about Celebration. When are we going to hear something?
Yeah.
This gets asked quite a bit.
Well, Cavan,
you're probably closer to this than I am.
Yeah, Cavan, I keep talking about this too because he's, we're trying to help each other out here. He's not able to go, and so, but yeah, it's a question that keeps coming up. Is like, when is Celebration? When are we going to hear something about Celebration? We really not heard anything about tickets. I mean, we know that those were deferred. You could either keep them, you could get refunded. But this thing is in literally 5 months now, right? I mean, we're almost exactly at 5 months, and we still know nothing. And
nothing.
Right. And Albert and I know nothing either, because usually, so this time 2 years ago, or 2+ years ago, we already had signed up for about 6 months out. We already had to have everything to do the podcast stage. We had to apply for everything, all of the media, all that stuff behind the scenes. Like, it was all very much in motion, even if it was kind of organized chaos. And this is just radio silent. Aside from them doing the hotels and all of that type of stuff, there's been nothing. And it's really, I don't know if I should be concerned about this or not. Of course, this was moved from August up to May, but the lack of information, is it worrying you in any kind of way? Or is this, no, it's the holidays. They don't expect to get a whole lot done. When we get to January, we're going to be hitting it hard, and we're going to hit it fast.
Oh boy, I don't know. I can't get a pulse on this one, and we're not the only ones. I mean, there's a lot of people, at least in our circles, and that do shows and that are YouTubers, and they're all in the same. And even just anybody that's just going to attend, we're all in that same boat. And there's a lot of discourse going on back and forth about why this is the way it is. You would think if they moved it up right from August to April or whatever that was, that we would have more information, or they would have a better plan. You wouldn't want to do that without having some things set in stone. So it does beg the question as to why we don't have more concrete and official answers, especially when you're, like you said, trying to book hotels and trying to coordinate things. And, we want to be out there. We're planning on being out there and doing some kind of after party or after shows and, after the conventions on a couple of days and that sort of thing. So I don't know. It's a good question. And I really wish we had better answers, but my guess is we're going to get a lot of that information. Well, we're going to have to, right? We're going to have to get a lot of that information really fast and heavy. And when it comes, there may not be a lot of time to, we'll be scrambling like everybody else. So
Right.
if it makes you feel any better, we're all in the same boat. So we don't have any inside information any more than the other groups.
Right. And we talked a lot about last show with the lack of information that came out at Investor Day. Celebration's got a lot more weight on it to deliver on news of what's happening in 2022 as well as 2023. So we got a lot riding on it. So I'm nervous right now, but I'm hoping it's just when we get to January, everything's going to start falling into place, and we're going to have an idea of at least what to expect. But from like us doing like a podcast stage and things like that, I'm kind of thinking that's maybe not even a thing this year. They're going to do it completely different because it takes a lot to get organized and work through. So.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
That's
know.
a good point. We don't know what's going to be cut or changed or moved.
Yeah.
It's just, kind of in the dark here a little bit. So, all right, let's move on to Rogue Squadron, because Rogue Squadron is, quote, back on the menu. However, I want to
Full
the
disclosure.
disclosure here is full disclosure is there's still nothing official from anybody. And I know Lucasfilm is always, they're not the quickest to put out official statements on a lot of things until it's already, there in front of your on your lap or in front of your face. But, we had talked about, Patty Jenkins being offer, having to step away from Rogue Squadron. And we talked about that one of the more likely reasons was because they decided to move Wonder Woman 3 up in the schedule, and that wasn't planned. And so when that happened, something had to give, right? I actually, I'm really happy about this because it is her passion project, right? More so than Cleopatra, which was the other thing that was on the table. She's dropping Cleopatra, stepping away from that. And that was more of Gal Gadot's, or Godot. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but it was more of her passion project, right? That Cleopatra thing. And she wanted Patty Jenkins to kind of be the director, and that made sense. And they did Wonder Woman. And so I think it says a lot for her, right, to be able to step away from that, given their close relationship, and say, you know what, I can't do that right now. I really want to focus on Rogue Squadron, which I think speaks a lot to what Patty Jenkins wants to do with this. Because if you think about that teaser and that whole story about her, grandfather, and always wanting to tell the story of World War II and her, infatuation with like airplanes, World War II planes, dogfighting, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't come out and do all of that, and you don't get somebody like, you don't come out and make a statement like that and say, this is what I'm going to do, and then, back out of it, unless you really can't. I mean, I'm not saying there wasn't legitimate reasons if that was really the case, but the fact that she's decided to, she's kind of weighing her options and going, well, Cleopatra, Gal, love you, but I'm going to do Rogue Squadron, I think says a lot. So at least I'm happy if this is all true, that we still have Rogue Squadron on the table. I wonder if that movie was still going to get made either way. What do you think on that?
Well, I mean, yeah, and officially they said it was just disappeared from the release schedule. It didn't mean it was canned. You and I had the feeling that it felt like it was canned because things are just
right.
Nothing at all about it. But again, this is another one of those, these things are fluid, I think is basically what we have to take away from it. And that things are going to have these kind of peaks and valleys, and things are going to change so much over the course of the life of these projects. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those types of things throughout the show today, and even with Patreon, where these things just have a life of their own sometimes. And sometimes it works out and they work and they get made and they turn out great, or they turn out maybe meh, but other times they just, for whatever reason, they just can't get off the ground. They just never seem to get their feet under them. And these projects, the projects, because Rogue One was kind of like this too, right? For as much as everybody loves it, Rogue One was a complete disaster from making the movie, to the point where it didn't even feel like it was going to get made at one point. Mm-hmm. And so it's difficult with these stories that don't have the firmness of the sequel trilogy. At least it's going to be made. You've got 3. You have an idea, quote unquote, the story you're going to tell. But in Solo had the same type of things too, right? You're trying to do something different, and you're paving the way and sorts, and that makes it really difficult to really have a really true, clear path. And those things can take a lot longer to plan and to get right. And we're a little impatient whenever something is announced to us. We kind of expect to see it moving in some way. Hello, Cassidy Andor, looking at you. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and to be clear and fair, right? This is not indicative of Star Wars in particular, or Lucasfilm or Disney. This is every movie. I mean, right? I mean, you hear about it, and we're not. You and I, we read all this stuff, but we know people that are in the industry, and in fact, I was talking to one over the weekend, and she was telling me this horrible story that went on during the production of thing, where the whole, well, I can't say. I think she's under an NDA, but it doesn't matter. The point is, this stuff happens, and it's just the life cycle of a movie production, and so you can expect some of this stuff. We're probably more focused on the end product at the end of the day, right? And that turned out really well for Rogue One. So until something changes,
And I don't care what
pretty
they said; it
optimistic
turned out
about
well for Solo too.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
know you like Solo. I like Solo too. It's
I
just
like it
not-
more like every time I see it subsequently too. But all right, I'll
I
get off
know,
that
you told me.
soapbox.
No, you told me. You told me. All right. Let's talk about Mission to Disaster. This is a really just quick note for anybody that's
Yeah.
been playing at home. Justina Ireland came on Twitter a couple weeks ago and mentioned that had been pushed back to February 1st, which is not a huge deal
Like a
because
week or
it's supposed
two.
to take place. Well, yeah, and it takes place after the events of the first two books. So,
Yeah.
I mean, great, right? That gives us more time to read these things without having to feel like
Right.
we're under the gun to get them done and out. So,
Yeah.
if you're looking forward to Mission to Disaster, that'll be out February 1st and not whatever the original date was now.
Yeah,
I
and
forget.
and again,
January 14th, 15th.
yeah, and again, these things just seem to be as a result of the ongoing different things that are going on with the world right now too. Not necessarily
Yep.
with the product or anything like that. Just getting that out, getting it edited, getting it printed and distributed. Just seems like a mess right now in general.
Yeah. And speaking of looking a mess, did you order the out of print Fallen Star book from out of print? Sorry.
Damn right I did.
Did you?
I did.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I'm gonna shill all the things for it. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, well, we're shills. So now if you
Apparently so.
get a chance, go look at my Twitter post that picked up a lot of traction where I photoshopped not only the hat on the Leonardo DiCaprio one, but I also got actually the way I took this, I actually put the bag on and took a selfie, and then I went out and photoshopped the bag off of me and stuck it on Leonardo DiCaprio, and those are actually my feet that you see there with the for the socks, because when I first got Light of the Jedi and had the socks, I had put them on and I was reading as a shill would, right?
Mhm.
And I decided to take a picture of my socks because that's what a shill would do. And I had that picture, so I couldn't find. I had to dig back to January of last year to find it. Cropped it out, threw it in there. So
This is
all
what I
that
love
said-
about you, Albert. Like, you are committed. Like, whenever you get your mind on something, especially if it's one of these little passion weird things, like, you were all
Yeah.
in, man. You were all in. Now, if it's
Yeah.
about like not showing up 10 seconds before the show starts, don't know if that's going to work or not. But if there's a meme to be created or if there's something to troll online,
I'm your guy.
Albert Padilla is your man.
Now, there's more hilarity on Twitter if you want to
Yeah. There's
go see what I'm doing
no
out there.
shortage of it.
No shortage of it. Okay, so I did too, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'll come back to that another time.
It's super exciting.
I was
The
gonna
cover looks amazing though. And the
Oh, yeah.
beanie's just
We didn't bring it up.
yeah, the beanie's just we posted online and all of that too. That's kind of where the whole shill thing came from. But yeah, it's a really cool looking book. I mean, this is probably the best of all of the covers, cover art that we've seen yet, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic. Speaking of the Fallen Star, they did release an excerpt from the Fallen Star. So I don't want to really get into spoilers too much. I would say in short, the Nihil are all but gone at this point. In the whenever this is in the book, right? I don't know. They didn't say if it's at the beginning. It feels like it's at the very beginning.
It does.
Maybe at the very end. I don't know. But the Nihil definitely are pretty much on their back feet here and really just almost gone. And the one cool thing about this is all I'll say is they're introducing synthetic crystals. Like canonically, we've got synthetic crystals coming back because I don't remember, and you correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody that's watching this, it can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember ever hearing about synthetic kyber crystals in canon.
Not in the recent canon. In EU, of course, there were.
Well, yeah, EU,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, that was all day, every day. But
No, I think that's been always the big push, right? Is there's a shortage of kyber, and so anytime they find a real deposit of it, it's a big deal, a big deal, right? So Rogue One was like that. We saw it with what was it? It was in Rebels with Saw Gerrera, and some of the stuff going on behind the scenes with the Empire. And so I think, yeah, it's a new idea with it, and it's interesting that it's happening in the High Republic, like so way back, right? So I think that's what to see if it actually becomes anything or if it's just more of a blurb or something like that. And to make a comment about the the Nihiler and retreat type of thing, that excerpt seemed like a total setup, by the way. Like, things are too easy. It's things must really be, and Marshall Chris must really be making progress and all these things. It just feels like a huge setup to have the
rug pulled out from underneath.
exactly, the whole table's about to kick from underneath you. But
Oh yeah,
but yeah,
we're gonna
synthetic
lose a few
crystals.
legs.
It'd be curious how they take it, and like what they do with it, and what it actually translates into, what it means. Was there
Yeah,
any
I don't know.
real context around it? I didn't get to read the
No.
Mission to Disaster one.
Well, it was so darn it. Now I'm drawing a blank on her name. The Tinkerer. So the one that steals Emery Cantros's lightsaber at the very end
Oh
of
yeah,
the first book. Remember, she takes it out of his bag or whatever,
right.
satchel, and like basically thieves it. And when we talked about it on air, we said, I wonder if this is going to pan out. Now there were a number of things that have
Av-
already happened in these books that we
Avenstaros?
was it Avanstar? I think you're right.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So when that happened, we said, what is she going to do with it? I was thinking she was going to deconstruct the light. I think I said she was going to deconstruct the lightsaber and make her own and all that. I didn't even think about the synthetic crystal
Yeah.
part of it. She was more obsessed with the kyber crystal itself and wanted to recreate that as a. And so the only context that they will give, and it's again not a real big spoiler, but it sounds like she's coming at this from an angle of unlimited energy,
Mhm.
right? An unlimited power source of some sort. And how can we synthesize this and use it for something? Now, we know that this, all of these good intentions usually get turned to crap in Star Wars. So somewhere down the line, yeah, there's probably going to be some weird stuff that comes from it. But
Right.
yeah, we'll see. But it was good to read it. Good to see something, even if it really wasn't anything that was going to be a big spoiler and all that. So take a look at it if you can. It's out on StarWars.com is the official website. And then lastly, and we'll just kind of tee this up because we're going to talk about this on the Patreon show after this. We got a trailer for Star Wars Eclipse,
Yeah.
which is a Lucasfilm games. Those are LucasArts games. I forget what
Lucasfilm. Yeah, Lucasfilm game.
Lucasfilm games.
Yeah.
I forget they changed that now.
Right.
Game that they've got coming out. We'll talk about all the details and what we know, what we don't know. It would be completely careless and reckless of us to speculate on what the game is about.
Yeah.
But that's what we do. So we're going to do that on the Patreon show.
Right. You can pay for it.
We're going to be irresponsible and reckless and completely speculate on what we see in the trailer,
Like Claius.
right after the show. So,
which fits right into
can't wait.
Fits right into Monster Temple Peak. And to answer Chris, Chris had a question about when does Fallen Star release? Is that's in May, April or May? I think.
Fallen Star?
Yeah. When does that come out?
No, it's in January.
Oh, it's in January.
Yeah. No, that's just we're like a month away. I think it was like January 14th.
Oh, okay.
Let me do some research on the fly because
Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was so far in the future.
No. We're it's coming out. Oh, why did you ask this, Chris? January 4th.
Oh, there you go. So just a few weeks.
Yeah, in just a few weeks.
Oh, maybe it won't be until May until Outer Print actually mails the copy out.
Right. I think that's what it is. I think it said it's not releasing on the first week there.
Right.
So if we get advanced reader copies, ARCs, what I'm hearing is we may be getting them this week.
Okay.
So when you see, if they do, I guarantee you the people that get them are going to be posting like rampantly because it's just, there's a lot of anxiety right now because we've been hearing they weren't going to do ARCs at one point. There was some they may not do they may not do like the proofed copies and all that. Sometimes we get those. Sometimes we get the final print versions of them. But what we've been hearing is nothing was going to go out. They were trying to keep this completely secretive. And now just last week I heard that if maybe there's a chance, and if it does, it's going to be this week coming up. So
right.
I'm hoping we do because I really want to start reading that thing.
Yeah, it gives us something to do over the holidays. And
Yep.
yeah, so one last question from Risk Bayless in the chat. Do y'all do the Patreon episode live ever? Well, yes, we do sometimes. And tonight is going to be one of those nights. So after the show is over, when we get towards the end of the show, we will post a link out in Discord. So if you're listening to us, we'll post a new link out in Discord. It'll probably be to YouTube. So hopefully most people watch it on YouTube anyway, but it'll be out there on YouTube so you can go pull it in the same way. But unfortunately, the way that it's all set up, we have to send out a new link to get it to work. And since we never really know if this is going to be a 45-minute show or a 45-day show, it's difficult for us to schedule that in advance. So
you could have said 45 hours. You have to go 45 days.
Just go big or go home, bro.
Oh, okay.
So,
right,
but yeah, so check Discord. It'll be in the main Cantina Cast channel, and we'll post that out there. Usually, we have about a 10 or 15-minute break between the shows just to freshen up a little bit. But we'll have that out there, and we hope everybody can join it, and that you can watch it live. It's open for everybody. But once the live stream is over, then it will get locked back down. And it'll be for Patreon only. But for the folks who are out there listening to us live, we'd like to share our thoughts on this stuff with you. And I think Eclipse is kind of a fun one to debate because we really know absolutely nothing about it. So
Yep.
Be cool to get everyone's thoughts about where they think it might go to.
Yeah, we'll and it is not it is a Patreon show, but you can share the link out. I mean, it's so late in the evening. I don't know, we'll get a lot of people to join us, so
Right.
feel free, even if you're not a Patreon member, if you're in Discord, we'll throw it in there. Anybody can join and watch that show as well.
If not,
So,
well, cease and desist work everywhere, so I guess we'll just do that. It's cool.
yeah. And that 15 minutes is so that we can slip into something a little more comfortable. No, it's actually so we can get all our crap together because we got show and tell.
Yeah, that's actually
Which I know you got a lot
more
of.
true. Well, I'm keeping it to a minimum.
Okay. Yeah, pacing yourself.
That's right.
Okay, let's do this. We're going to move into our main show, which is talking about the monster of Temple Peak. So,
wait, hold on. We had a new Patreon. We had a welcome back.
Yes,
Patreon.
no,
yeah.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Oh well, thank you. It is Carol Cantwell has rejoined Patreon. She stopped for a little bit there, came back. She joined the $5 tier. So, Carol, thank you so much for coming back, and we really appreciate the support. I don't think I've got the credits updated yet with your name because it just happened, but everybody else that I've been promising and the last people that wouldn't get the show last week, it's there. I promise, stick to the very end. You'll see it. So, but yes, thank you, Carol, for coming back.
Yeah. If you saw our 5-minute episode earlier in the week, you got to see that
I ran them.
The credits are there. It's a real thing this time. We promise.
I did. I ran those son of a. All right. Let's okay, can we talk about Monster Temple?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's talk about Miss
All right.
Tylera Yorrick.
Tylera Yorrick. All right, so this is we're going to get into some High Republic stuff. Now, the cool thing about this series is it takes place before we get to Light of the Jedi, certainly before, the Rising Storm, where she's kind of formally introduced. But it's kind of almost an origin story, if you will.
I bet.
Although I've got a problem with that, and we'll come back to that here in a little bit. And it's a small problem, but I do have a problem with it. This is a 4-issue series. It was released by IDW, written by Cavan Scott. It was penciled by Rachael Stott.
Yeah.
Who, can we just talk about the pencils? Because honestly, man, I really like. I just found out she's doing the Fantastic Four for Marvel right now, which now I kind of want to go check out. But I thought she did a really good job with the pencils on this. It was just so like clean, and Ty Yorrick's expressions. I was going to put one in the back for my wallpaper here, but her expressions, as you know, the attitude that we get with Ty Yorrick was really cool. But both the writing and the pencils and inks, I thought were really fantastic in this series. Like it was great. I really enjoyed this comic, and that's why I felt like we should probably talk about this to get people to pick it up. It feels like a sleeper kind of title.
If you like digitally created colors and drawing and so, which this is clearly fits into that, but nice and clean, really crisp. But the action that they do, like the way that they show motion and the colors, especially with the brightness of her, purple lightsaber and the way that it arcs and things like that, really are fantastically done. And Rachael Stott, I hadn't seen any of her work previously. And I think I posted on Twitter when this first came out, like, I want more of whatever she's doing, because the artwork on this comic was probably my favorite aspect of the comic. Actually, the story was pretty decent, but that artwork on it was really the part that I enjoyed perhaps the most of any part of it. And that really huge contribution to her. And she was super happy to hear that and stuff. And she seems really cool. So hopefully we get more of her in Star Wars.
Yeah, no, she was pretty responsive on social media anytime we posted anything or talked about it, which is always great to hear and see. I was going to say there was something I was going to mention also. So let me just talk, I guess, quickly about the one problem I had with the storyline.
Yeah, sure.
It wasn't the writing so much. I actually enjoyed Cavan Scott's writing, both in novels and in comic books. What I was hoping the series was going to be was a series of books or tales of her time as a monster hunter, right?
Yeah.
The idea of somebody that was once a Jedi, now a saber for hire monster hunter, right? We got all that teased out in The Rising Storm. And so when this comic was introduced, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be awesome. This is, I was thinking, is this going to be like a monthly, series where we get the first 4 and then, it ends and now she picks up a new mission and she goes and hunts this particular monster and all that. And the reason why I liked it, I like Monster of the Week type stuff, whether it be in a TV series, go back to the X-Files where this was really prevalent. But the comic book itself, the way it was drawn and the way Cavan Scott wrote it reminded me of the old Marvel comics. And I think we mentioned that at one point when we were talking about
Mhm.
the Monster of Temple Peak, but the writing style itself felt like it was a big throwback to that. I know for a fact he is a huge fan of those comics, of the old Marvel comics,
Oh, he very
and
much
kind of
is.
that Monster League, right? Uh, so that legacy lives on in this comic, and it felt like, okay, well, at the end of the series, and again, we're going to spoil some stuff here, so I apologize in advance. Turn it off and go read the comics or go buy them if you don't want to hear it. But at the very end, we do get the sense that she's going to. Well, I mean, did you kind of take the very ending? I don't want to jump to the very end, but we're going to. Did you get the? Did you get like the sense that she was kind of done, like that was it, and she was now going into getting away from monster hunting at that point?
Uh, no, I don't think so because I think it was still clear that she she's still going to be her own person. She's still striking out on her own. But
Yeah.
I think what she decided at the very end though was that she was going to take more of an assertive approach and a more direct approach. So she was using what they called the Varazene stone,
Yeah, the Stones.
yeah, to basically make decisions for herself. She wasn't willing to make a call on her own, which I get. Making a decision like this or that, or how do I feel? And she's so conflicted as a character that she's uncertain of herself about what she knows what's right and wrong. And you get that character, and it comes through very clearly for her about who she is and what, life matters to her. She doesn't want to take life and things like that. But her, what's gone on before her has really just really messed her up that she doesn't feel comfortable. She doesn't trust herself to make a choice
Mhm.
and basically letting the galaxy decide for her when really she's fighting against the galaxy making decisions for her because she wants to kind of control her own destiny too. So it was this a very dissonant rub going on with her character and just internally. And so by the time she gets into this series, she at least says, "Okay, I know who I am. I know what's right and wrong. I'm going to do this, but I'm still a loner." Like she still leaves Druin, right? And leaves him. Well, so she thinks leaves him behind, but it's very much she has a little bit more confidence about what she's going to do moving forward, but I don't think she's getting rid of monster hunting, and we certainly see that when we get to, Rising Storm, right? Because she's still very much maybe not monster hunting, but she is certainly a
She's like a
saber
mercenary at that
she's still
point.
yeah, she's still a merc, she's still a saber for hire, she's still a
Yeah.
bodyguard, she's basically just, someone she just needs to make a buck, right? And so
Right.
the credits are hard to come by, so she needs that help, but at least she has more of
Yes.
that directive towards the end of it.
Okay. Now I feel better about that. I walked away from the series thinking, okay, well, I guess the monster hunting's over, and now she's just becoming a merc, saber for hire, and I guess that's fine. I mean, I wouldn't mind that, but I'm more about the monsters. So
Right.
hopefully you're right, and hopefully we do get to see more of that. But
Right. Now
so, anyways, that was the only minor hiccup I had. If really,
well, yeah, and so to kind of go off on along those lines, though, my thoughts about what I thought we were coming into this was we would use and it's kind of what Cavan Scott did was basically we would use the context of monster hunting in order to understand what all went into Ty Yorrick's decisions to leave the order. What happened? Why was this such a dramatic ordeal, and what has been going on since? And we got a piece of that, but I thought that was actually probably the weaker part of the story as to why we're still left with a huge gap as to why she left the order. She had a very
yeah,
traumatic event, and we'll walk through it here and give that backstory. But she had a very traumatic event, but at the same time, she turned her back on everything as a result. So it just, to me, it seems like there's still a huge gap in her character right there that we didn't get to learn. And
yeah,
for a 4-issue miniseries, I would have expected more of that. And this is where I think the monster hunting aspect of this one got in the way of really giving us a deeper dive into her character and what all the damage is done. I thought this was her moment to shine. This is her comic, right? I mean, this is effectively Ty Yorrick's comic book
hmm
and a dedicated series, but we really didn't get enough of that. It seems like things happened to her, not necessarily like she made choices or there was a lot of other things going on that led to a really difficult decision. It was like, no, there was a singular event that she got scared and, severely traumatized. I think rightfully so that she was traumatized by it, but it just seemed like there was a disconnect there for me. And so that was the part I was disappointed for as focus as the series was on her. The monster hunting almost got in the way of all of that, especially with the really kind of petty thing the villagers were doing in this one. But maybe we kind of beat around the bush quite a bit. So why don't we maybe get into a kind of an overview of the story? Because
yeah.
there's a
No,
kind of a couple different stories going on at the same time here.
yeah, you're right. So the comic book is actually broken up into two storylines, and the way Cavan Scott did this is he wrote You've got I'm going to call it the present day, which is really not the present. It's actually the past. It takes place again before Light of the Jedi at some point, and she is this monster hunter. Now, in the middle of this story that they're telling about her, hunting monsters, she then there's things that trigger these memories for her that then flash back to when she was a Padawan, and that's where we learn we get to see that along, even before when I don't know how old we don't know how old Yorrick is. At least I don't remember how old she is. But we definitely get some small scenes of her as a Padawan, and she goes through a horrible experience, and we'll start there because it really we're going to start with the flashback scenes. Although in the comic book they switch back and forth between the two.
Right. There's a certain
we're going to talk about all the
phrase.
flashbacks.
Yeah, there's a phrase that kind of kicks off a memory for her or a situation. Pretty standard stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. Similar to like we had in what is it, Tempest Runner, right? With Lorna D, where we had the main story. Somebody would say something, or she'd have a memory, and the next thing you know, we're doing the little doo-doo thing, and we're flashing back to that's a Wayne's World reference, if anybody. But yeah, we're flashing back. Okay, so we start on Alaris Prime, which is this where there's a Jedi temple. We get to learn her name. Her full name is Tylera. It's not just Ty York, which is okay. That's kind of cool. But they called her meek and timid, which are not words that I would use to describe Ty York, especially not when we get to the Rising Storm and even what we saw in the quote present day of this comic book. She's not anything but meek and timid. So
she's moody. That much is for sure.
Yeah, she can have a quick temper at times, but she's kind of a softie inside too, right? We'll get into that here as well. But she's kind of training with this Padawan named Caius Pterodine, who's a Zeltron. The Zeltrons are those red-looking evil races. They're not like Sith,
right?
But they just got like the red version of a Chiss almost,
right?
And they got those crazy eyes.
Yeah, very smooth skin. And while you're talking here, I'll bring up a couple of pictures from the comic.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And then we also we get to see her Jedi Master Sababa, and he's an Ozamel. Master Sababa, he was mentioned in the Rising Storm. So we got the reference there, but we never got a whole lot of details or context around who he is or what all that. So the Ozamel, the dudes with all the eyes. But this is in that first scene that they're together. He's basically teaching them about doing this what do they call that? The Force bond, where they can kind of talk to other animals and people and stuff, which is kind of cool because this ties into what we see in the Rising Storm, where her and Elzar Mann come together and go through that whole experience, and that's how we get the mention of Sababa, and then they become kind of like this. They're kind of weird for each other at the end of it all, if you want to call it that, because she's not into like males, right? She clearly said in the Rising Storm that that's not her type, but yet she finds this kind of affinity with Elzar Mann. Now I'm only saying that because in this comic they kind of start us there, and they're going through those teachings which she's not very good at. Right, she doesn't feel like she's really good at it at that point. So the next flashback scene we have is both her and that Padawan Caius. They're scaling the side of a mountain. You want to? Do you have any?
Well, actually, that's the part I'm on. Yeah, and actually, I got a close up of him here.
You got to share your screen here.
Yep.
But yeah, they're on this mountain called Mount Bikja, and so they decide. Caius is kind of like the guy that really wants to get in trouble. He convinces her that they need to sneak out of this Jedi temple late at night.
They won't do it anymore.
No, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, they got smart on me.
That's all good. You got to take pictures, screenshots, and share them. But they decide they're going to sneak out of the Jedi temple, and they sneak out of the temple, and they end up going to this Yallo temple. Now, Yallo is something we've never heard before. This is the first time it's ever mentioned. Right. This temple is where these Darksiders once had secrets of the Force, but then suddenly they mysteriously all disappeared, but their temple was there. And so Caius is all about, hey, let's go sneak in there and go find all of this stuff to discover, all these riches to discover. She doesn't really want to go through with the plan. Again, she's meek and timid. She's like, we're going to really get in trouble. Right. But he eventually convinces her to go, and so they take off. They're climbing up the mountain. She almost falls, and he catches her using something called, what was it? The Sabraki sages, right?
Yeah, it's really curious.
Yeah, so it's like he uses some kind of a force ability to help her that's not Jedi taught, right? It's another force user. So now we've got mentions of the Yallo Temple, we've got or the Yallos, the Sabraki sages, and then there's another. And then he does another name drop for Zepho. So the reason I felt this was important is with Cavan Scott. When you think about what he's done with Dooku, Jedi Lost, there was a lot of names and a lot of factions that were dropped in that. We've got this as well now. A lot of world building that's happening
So there's
here.
all right, so on the screen there, we've got the Sabraki. He's literally standing
Yeah.
on the side of the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So he's using this ability from the Sabraki sages to kind of be standing like that on the mountain itself. I guess for anybody that's listening to the podcast, you're standing on the mountain, standing on the side of a mountain, like horizontally, right? Like you got spider shoes or sticky shoes or some sort, right? You're kind of walking up the mountain that way. Yeah. See, he looks evil, but he's not.
Right.
Not yet.
Right. But yeah, he's got that very smooth features. He's like pink. He's kind of like elven ears, but yeah, kind of sharp canines. But yeah, kind of an interesting guy there.
So they get to the temple, and once they reach there, she's freaking out. She's going through the whole Jedi code about there's no fear, there's only certainty. She's really obviously very scared, and there's a moment there where once they get really deep into the temple, they find what looks like a lightsaber. They call it a soothsaber.
Yeah, soothsaber.
So,
but the art
not the same thing.
And I'd show it on the screen, but really you can't tell what it is. It just looks like a rack of lightsabers, and it's very hard to see. It's very shadowed and dark. But yeah,
what's funny is the hilt looks like not to get really nerdy here, but the hilt looks like a longsword hilt. Like it's very, very long, very broad. That little T-bar, I forget what that piece is called there.
Yeah, the cross.
Sure, the crossbar. But yeah, it does. It looks like a more of a medieval weapon than it does a traditional lightsaber, or even a lightsaber that we have come to see during this time period of the High Republic.
Right.
So he's, they're finding all kinds of stuff in there. And then he mentions this is kind of at the very end of all the flashbacks. He mentions that he's looking for a, what is it called? A Vitalicron?
Yeah. Vitalicron. Right.
Right. Which is, it's like a datacron that we know of, like, with a datacron for like the Jedi, they would go in and record messages and people could play back these messages there. Jonesy's showing one right now. They would record their messages and history and store things in there like this. But this was a storage of actual memories.
Yeah.
Right. So physical memories were dumped into this thing. So it's kind of a sick way, a twisted way of or a approach or twist on the datacron.
Yeah, and
itself.
it's interesting. Yeah. So and the thing is genetically sealed, but apparently the seal is broken. And what's really interesting though about it is that it just only he can hear it. It's all just completely inundated. So whereas mostly when you've seen with holocrons and other, types of things, even what we saw how Avar Crisp was introduced to us, right, where you have a projected image and then they're talking to you, and while it's their conscious self, if you will, in some of those cases, and this one it really does seem to be like they have somehow extracted their presence and their being. And this is the interesting about the dark side in general. The dark side can permeate and kind of infest objects of sorts and just be imbued upon it to where that presence, like we saw this at the cave, right, in Dagobah. We've seen it with Lord Moment in the helmet. Of course, they had some special circumstances with it, but those types of things where they have this weird, I don't know, call it science or their magic, kind of witchcraft type of thing of how they get these things and these objects that really can just completely take over you. And that's what happens with Claudius is all of his, and I can't help but think that his lack of humility, right, which is very evident. He's very confident in his abilities, although he almost gets impaled with a booby trap, basically. But he's very confident in his abilities. He's very confident with what he thinks their plans are. You shouldn't. You were talking about this before when he learns, the trick of sticking onto the mountain is you don't learn this from a Jedi, right? There are things to learn outside of the Jedi Order, and that's okay, and we can apply them. And we've heard this before. The only way to defeat the dark side is to learn all the secrets of the dark side, right? This is a trap many people have fallen into constantly.
Yeah, he channels Palpatine
and Anakin, yeah,
book.
yeah. I mean, all in one, yeah. And he firmly believes it, and unfortunately, it's kind of his soul is ripe for the taking and this type of thing, and he's consumed, all out consumed really quick. It's actually pretty scary how quickly it all comes about for him.
Yeah. So these memories get released out of this Vitalicron. They go into him, and it's almost like he becomes mad. Like the memories have kind of taken over him.
Right.
And we're not clear of where this is. I don't remember if it was like one being's memories or a multitude of memories that were captured in
Yeah,
this Vitalicron,
they
but
didn't really
they
specify.
didn't specify. But yeah, and it's enough that it kind of takes him over. In fact, I think she makes a comment about being a Jedi at one point, like, "Hey, you can't do this kind of thing," and he says, "I'm not a Jedi." Like he's completely been transformed now into someone else because of the memories. Um, and he starts coming at her. He starts coming at her with his lightsaber, and she's sitting there defending herself, trying to, speak to the inner person that he is. And it ends with this tragic event where she instinctively ignites her lightsaber as a way of defense, and she impales him. I don't know if you can pull that one up as well, but that's the tragic thing that happens. So, and it ends right there. I mean, that is really the last flashback that we had, and we went through all of them in all four of the comics. So again, they're
Right.
very small, very quick. But the way I took this, you're right. Like we don't really have a good sense of what happens at this point up until when we see her in the Rising Storm. Presumably, I would say she goes back. If we get more of this later on, right? If the story continues in the next series or whatever, and we get more flashbacks, I'm guessing she goes back to the Jedi Temple. One of two things happens: either she runs and leaves and feels like, okay, I'm no longer a Jedi because I've killed a Jedi, and she can't show her face, and or she leaves, or she gets there's some kind of punishment that's thrown down on her. One for leaving the temple or the Jedi Temple in the first place, and then two, endangering her life and Claius's life, and then three, taking Claius's life with her lightsaber. We don't really have a good sense of how the Jedi come down on things like that. We know what they're like when we get to the era of Yoda and the prequels. Yeah, there you go. You can kind of see she's trying to fight him off
Right.
as he's possessed. But we're not really sure how that is. But if it is something where they kind of come down on her to the, much like they did with Ahsoka, right, where they
Right.
pretty much exiled her or told her she was no longer a Jedi, and she said, "I'm walking away," kind of thing. Something like that probably happened, and it's just which is why she left the order. But we don't really know. I mean, there's a big time gap there. But
Well,
what do you think? Do you think we're going to get any of that story, and is that really how it plans out, or do you
well, I think
anything else you can
I
think?
think we got to think about Cavan Scott here and what we've had from him previously with Juku Jedi Lost, right? So there's a pretty clear parallel with the Bogan collection, right? And what they were doing, they were researching, or they were they going down to the bowels of the Jedi archives or the Jedi Temple, and they have this secret collection of dark side things that only the masters are able to study because they're just too dangerous, right? And there's a lot of those things, but even though they were busted, they weren't really they were in trouble, but they weren't going to get expelled or anything quite that severe. So I don't know that was that. And I think if anything, Ty Yorrick she thought it was a bad idea. She went along with it. I think more or less try to help keep him safe. I think as well, to her effect. Now that was the unfortunate part is that he was throwing all of that back in her face when he was possessed. Right? You shouldn't have let this happen to me. You were supposed to be the smart one, basically. I can't
Right.
believe you let me do this, basically hitting her with all of these pangs of guilt that still carry forward to her, in today and in the more current story. And so it was a bit of an interesting rub there, but I think it wasn't necessarily something she was going to get kicked out by. I think they would have been reprimanded, and I think clearly Claes already knows that as well, right? If he knew we were doing this, I'd be doing sanitation for a month or whatever it was. I don't know what is it with all the sanitation jokes in Star Wars.
There's a lot of sanitation going on.
There are.
It's a dirty galaxy. What do you expect? Somebody's got to clean it up.
But this is the pristine era. There's not supposed to be any dirt. But yeah, again, I didn't think there was anything of that nature where she would be held accountable for that, especially if they're both Padawans in this case, where she was defending herself against a clearly possessed and someone who, while it maybe not have been her superior, definitely had the confidence. And when you have that much anger and you're fearful and you're fighting kind of for your life and you're confused and you're scared, then things happen. I don't think the Jedi would have abandoned her for that, especially in this era where I think this is one of those times where even a guy like Yoda, like a character like Yoda, would be the one to come in and talk with that Padawan about it, right? This is the things that Yoda does well, is he's able to communicate with you on a level that really joins the two of you together and really, connects you to, like we saw with the clones, right? In the Clone Wars series with Yoda. So those are always the way
Yeah.
I view that. And I think this is an era where there's a lot of latitude, and while there's a lot of rigidity within the Jedi Order, I think some of these things where kids are still going to be kids, they're going to be curious about the dark side. They're going to go and do things they shouldn't do. But these are also those really hard, kind of stereotypical lessons that they learn of this is why there are rules in place. This is why there are boundaries that we should, that we should adhere to sometimes, that they are there for our protections, not just to make us curious and make us want to do things that are out of character for us, or that, to spark our misbehaviors, I guess, if you will, in that regard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
No,
I'm curious why. But again, that's why there's the gap, right? And this is the part that I was let down by, a little frustrated by, is that we don't know what that fallout looked like. We don't know how she took this. I mean, clearly she was traumatized, right? In that she killed her friend, probably her best friend, and they lingered for a moment with their hands, touching at one point. And we know that there's these relationships that are permeating through the Jedi Order at all levels. It seems like, especially with the Padawans, I think, especially as they're coming through maturity. Uh, so clearly someone that she cared about, and that this wasn't, neither one of them wanted each other to get hurt. But what was all of that story? And I think that's where the monster hunting kind of got in the way of where this really could have been a 50-50 split kind of series. Really, it was much more an 80-20 type of split of how
No,
much.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be even more than that.
Well, and so I was just trying to thumb through the comics. Again, 4 issues, and there's really only about a handful of pages in each one of the 32 pages in each issue that were dedicated to the backstory. And that just shows you how, again, from our perspective, like when you come into that, you're expecting to get more than really the sum of maybe 10 pages out of 120. Instead, we expect, okay, we've got like 30 pages maybe, or something like that, 30 or 40 pages at most, or closer to. But again,
and these weren't like your average like single issues. They were, I don't know if they were double sized or what, but I mean, this could have easily been 6 comics, 8 comics.
Yeah, I mean, these were $6 comic books, so they're $5 or $6. So yeah, they're 32 pages. They're not the normal 22 or 23, whatever it is.
20,
Yeah, so these are the bigger comics. They're not quite as big as like an annual or something like that, but along those lines. So yeah, there's a lot of story in there. There's a lot of pages, and it takes you a little bit of time to read through it. But again, it was so focused on the Gretel Axe aspect of this in the village, which I understand. We're trying to see her character grow and move past something now, but sometimes that's difficult to do if you don't know where the character has totally been, and we only got a very small sliver of what that story was. Now, are we going to get more of that in Fallen Star or something in the future? I certainly hope so, and it seems like we should, based on what we got with Rising Star between her and Elzar Mann in particular.
Would you feel better if the next, let's say this is a basically 3 arc story, right? There's Monster of Temple Peak, there's arc 2, and there's arc 3. And by the time we get to the end of arc 3, you now have the full story right up until the events of the Rising Storm.
Yeah.
I mean, would that, I get what you're saying though, because the ratio of backstory to the main story here is really slim. So it did feel like there's still a lot to be done. And you're right. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, the simple answer is that was enough and she left and was scared, right? I mean, that seems kind of an easy way out. However, to your point, and it's a very good point, the Jedi in this era are not the Jedi in the prequel era, or, some of the other eras from Legends. They are ones where, I mean, you've got somebody like Elzar Mann, who's clearly crossed over into the dark side, has admittedly said, I've done some really, really horrible, horrible things and I need help. And they are bending over backwards to rehabilitate him and not throw him away, right? They're the baby with the away with the bathwater kind of thing. Right. So something like this, right? If she pleads her case, someone's probably going to take her under her wing and say, hey, don't worry about it. We get it, right? Or they go out and investigate the temple and determine, okay, yeah, this is all legit and you guys should have never been here and let's try to fix you kind of thing. So maybe the story is more complex than that. Maybe there is going to be some other things. Maybe this isn't the one event that changes her, maybe it's a series of events, right? This was the first straw or whatever, but I guess it's still to be determined. We know at the very end of the comic, and again, not to jump at it, but it just says that Ty Yorrick will be back. Pretty ominous. It doesn't say she'll be back like in novels or back in another comic or maybe with another publisher like Dark Horse Comics. We just don't know enough at this point. But my gut tells me we're going to get at least one more series, and we'll likely get the rest of the story, if not the next chapter, in that backstory of why she no longer calls herself or affiliates herself with Jedi.
Right. And to answer your question, yes, if they were to come back and we have kind of a follow-up story or even a couple of different follow-up arcs, even if they were miniseries as well, that helped fill in some of those gaps, I think, yeah, then it makes a lot more sense that we have a true we have true arcs, right? And you can continue this past and present type of thing and fill in those gaps. And I think that would work really, really well. The only part I don't the only part that frustrates me about that is why not come out ahead of time and say that, this is what we're gonna do. Instead, this was
Hmm.
billed as and I know we're kind of talking about story development, less so than the characters and stuff themselves. So, permanence to wax a little bit here, but when you're billing something as we are going to give you the backstory. Why is she the way she is? Who is the monster hunter? And some of those questions are definitely answered, I think, or at least we're given enough to work with, I think. But
Yeah.
I think it was just a little oversold from what we ended up getting with that. But I think, but yeah, if we were to get more of that, and again, I don't think it has to be a dedicated Ty York story. I think, because again, this is High Republic Adventures, is how this is actually billed under. So this is the younger reading level arc of the young readers arc of the High Republic, and for her to show up in some of those other stories, it makes a lot of sense, especially if maybe not with Elzar specifically, but if she comes in again, she's got Druin, and we know where Druin's probably going to come back into play, and he wants a teacher and whatnot. She has an opportunity to redeem herself in those types of ways. I hate to say redeem because I don't think she has anything to really be redeemed for, but
Right.
maybe
Right.
perhaps you get my meaning though of where something that helps uh kind of I can't think of the right word, like fix her. Well,
Reconnect with the light.
yeah, and like kind of rebuild her soul, if you will, right? Of just her
Mm.
kind of put the pieces back together for her to where she feels whole again in that kind of way, to where she feels like she belongs. She feels like she has a sense of self, and then she has a sense of purpose again. And I think we're getting there. And I think she very much got to that point, or is getting very close to that point in Rising Storm as well, which I think was a good connection to see in hindsight with this series, of saying where she ended up there, like how she started and how she ended up there. And again, some of the consistencies here, but also why that story makes a lot more sense for her as well. And how it was actually a pretty good developmental story for her in Rising Storm, even with the limited screen time on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why she became one of the favorites, right?
Yeah. And she's got the
No
coolest
surprise.
lightsaber. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And by the way, we don't get any. There's no explanation other than she put the spikes on her lightsaber, but we don't know why.
Yeah. Because they weren't there when she was a Padawan. Yeah. It's just the
No.
circle top of the blade, kind of like Kanan's. Yeah.
Yeah, and she definitely has the spikes when we get to the present day story in this.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to remember in the Rising Storm. I know she says that she did that herself, but I don't remember if she gave the explanation as to why now.
I don't think
I
so.
don't believe she did, but either way, so let's go to the present day story in this comic book, and let's start. I want to start without we're going to get into the all the nitty gritty here in just a second, but let's talk about Ty York now as a person, because she's very different than she was in the flashback scenes.
Right.
She's more on par with where we see her in the Rising Storm, but her personality is very different. She doesn't feel like she's definitely broken in some way.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly how. I mean, again, we've already talked about her killing another Padawan in self defense. Maybe that was one thing that happened to her, but it feels like there's something more deeper going on there with her. On top of that, she doesn't seem to attach herself very much to anything or anyone, right?
Including her droid.
She's including her droid. Like, she doesn't even, like, the droids have names, but she doesn't call them names. In fact, she references them. She even says they're just tools,
Yeah.
right? This
Machine.
very like callous, cold. You're just a machine. You're just a tool. You're not a personality. Although this droid exudes all kinds of personality,
Right.
like you would expect, right? It's like a protocol droid type thing.
And what's funny is KL03 is the droid, and
Yeah.
he wants, or no, I'm sorry, the droid, she wants Ty to call her. It'd be easier if you just call me KL.
Mhm.
And she goes, "No, I'm not doing that."
Yep. No, she won't name him. She won't name him,
Her,
which is
it is
really
a she. It is a she droid.
her. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's very bizarre. And so yeah, she's a very complex character, right? And then that's what makes it so interesting when she sees Elzar Mann, and why we've talked about those two characters coming together in that story, and the dynamic of their personalities coming together is going to be
Right.
pretty cool to watch, I think, in the Fallen Storm, if they get some time alone to kind of be together and do stuff together. But yeah, so that's kind of where. No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and that's the thing didn't get a good idea for is, again, how much time has passed, because she is very much a loner. She wants to be alone. Kind of a typical story of a loner, right? When something happens to you. But yeah, she has no interest in any kind of relationship with anybody unless they're paying her, right? And
Right.
as we got in the book, unless there's just kind of a little, to fill the time, if you know what I'm saying, and that type of thing, right? So it's
Yeah.
just a very, yeah, just a very lonely kind of life to live. But again, once she's just so afraid of connecting with someone, I think on any kind of level, like she did with Class, that it was just the idea is just fearful for her that she could have any faith in anything, that she can't trust herself to have those types of relationships. And so it's just easier to completely disconnect from them entirely.
Yeah. And to be clear, the one thing that is common both in this comic book, because it actually happens, and in the Rising Storm. In the Rising Storm, we're told she's, again, she's got this gruff outside. She's cold. She can be a little callous at times, real snarky. But whenever somebody says, can you help me? Or what was
Yeah.
there's a specific set of words, whatever it is. It's like, can you help me?
Yeah.
Or
Will you
I
help?
need your help.
Yeah. Will you help me?
Will you help? That's, or some, sure. Whenever that happens,
She can't say no.
she can't say no, right? That's her inner good self that we've talked about, her being a softie. She doesn't turn down anything if
Well,
there's people out there asking
but
her
if she
that.
doesn't hear it, then she feels then she
Right,
gives
yes.
herself an out not to have to help out or do anything about it though either.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So it's that, maybe it's her Jedi training, maybe it's just her good-natured spirit that's now buried deep within her.
yeah. Well, and
But
you're right. She still has this really sense of good. Like she doesn't want people to get hurt. Like when Pella falls off or we think she falls off the cliff, she's devastated. She's like,
oh yeah,
it
that she lost her.
happened again. I couldn't help her. I'm not strong enough. Like we see her doubts with the Force, and her ability to use the Force from a telekinesis type of way is not as strong as other characters are. And we saw this in the book as well, but it's definitely played up here quite a bit, that there's some gap there. She's able to do it, but there is some sort of mental block in place, I think more so than her lack of abilities, I think, in this respect. But you definitely get the sense of heart though in the character, that she really does care. She is not a bad person, and she doesn't
Mhm.
do bad things. Like she doesn't want to take a life. She doesn't want to take the life of an animal unless she really feels like she's compelled to, because there's no other way to do it. And really, she aside from the self-centeredness of it, she's really the embodiment of what the Jedi in this era are, and of what they aspire to be, where they
Right.
take no pleasure in doing these things, but they'll resign themselves to having to do it, and then they'll kind of grieve that loss later on in a very finite way, and then move forward. But
Yeah, yeah,
she's not able to do that last part very well right now.
yeah. Okay, well, so the main story that happens in the present day, we get a very quick beginning. We're on a planet called, what is it? Lorith? I think it's the
Yeah,
planet.
Lorith. Yeah.
No, Lorith. Yeah.
Well,
Excuse-
her other story starts somewhere else, where she's doing a job for what was it, a Gundark.
Yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
that'll come here in just one second. But it starts with the White Town in Pella. We're introduced to this little
Mhm.
girl. So there's a little girl in town. She's it's the primary location where this whole monster story is going to take place. And she basically steals this little transmitter from her uncle because she wants to listen to the beacon from Starlight Beacon, which I thought was a kind of nice little
Mhm.
tie-in, right?
She
I mean,
wants to
there's
know
like,
they're out there. Yeah.
yeah, like there's hope now out there, and in with this little transmitter, she's able to kind of listen in on that. But so it's very quick. It's just kind of an introduction into who Pella is, and the main setting for the story, and then we cut over to this called Blarum.
Yeah.
I can't say that right.
It's a weird word.
Blarum.
Yeah.
Blarum. Let's just call it Blarum in the Outer Rim. So she's on a planet, and this is Ty York fighting a Gundark. So, right, you feel strong. You look strong enough to pull the arms off a Gundark. We get to see one of these, and she's been hired. excuse me. To kill this thing, to bring it in. I think it was to bring in the head, if I remember correctly.
Right.
Um,
No, they
and
wanted it alive.
oh, they wanted it alive.
Because
That's right.
come to find out, they're going to sell it on the black market, which is
Yep.
illegal for harming dangerous animals. I will pull up a picture of a Gundark, because I know most people don't know what they look like.
No, thank you.
Keep going, yeah.
Yeah, and so the other thing that happens during this battle with the Gundark is there's this little character named Druin, and Jonesy just mentioned it a little while ago, but Druin is like this rabbit-looking. He almost looks like a lighter, thinner Jackson.
I knew you were going to say it.
Well, it's Cavan Scott. He loves Jackson.
It's true.
But yeah, it's kind of like this little rabbit-looking character, and we're getting it pulled up here in a minute. But this Jackson, Druin. There you go. There's the Gundark in the top there. So she's fighting this thing off with her lightsaber. And she's supposed to keep this thing alive.
Right.
She ends up killing it, which is not good, because when she gets back to the main town, and they're asking, "Hey, what happened to it?" You know, she's got to explain it. And there's all kinds of stuff breaks out. They're all upset of what's going on, and on top of that, come to find out, there are Jedi who are on this planet as well, the Jays, which I love that they call
Right.
the Jedi the Jays, right?
Hmm.
It's like the Popo or whatever, but the
Right.
Jays are out and about. They're on her hot on the trail of this illegal animal,
Yeah.
thing
Smuggler,
that's going
dealer.
on.
Yeah.
Yep. And so when that happens, the Jays kind of break up the whole deal, and she runs off. Well, she takes off on her ship and leaves. Well, she's got a castaway or a stowaway on her ship, and it turns out to be that little Druin character who is going to play a bigger role here in just a little bit. So we do get a scene where she's using the stones. We talked about those earlier about the was it the Varazene
Varazene. Right.
stones? Yeah, she mentions those in the. I think she mentions them in the Rising Storm as well,
Yeah. I
about how
couldn't
she
quite.
used to use them, but I
Yeah.
don't think she used them during that book. But essentially, it's just like, if you think about it, they're like dice, and you throw them down. There's moons on one side and suns on the other, and whatever you say, I'm going to go this way if I got more moons and suns, and whatever that is. The point is, she leaves a lot of this up to fate, not to the Force, but to fate, right? Just pure random chance. And she's still using them at this point, so it was a nice callback to see them. Yeah, there you go.
Look like dominoes of sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, more like dominoes, yeah, than dice. Yeah, they get the moons and the suns.
Yeah. And they're probably about the same size as a domino.
Yep. Um, yeah, so she kind of leaves it all up to fate, and that's the point of this is they throw that in there because again, it's a reference. She makes a reference in it's the reference is made in the Rising Storm. It was good to see it here. We got to actually see the
Right.
stones being used. She's going to eventually ditch this though, and not use this anymore by the end of this comic. We go back to the main town, and in short, what's happened is they've now hired her to come out to find a monster called the Gretel Axe. And there's a group there called Wyke Town, and Wyke is the name of the character, one of the characters, like the main.
That
I
founded
don't know
it.
what he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the magistrate or the leader.
Mhm.
Did he have an official title? I forget now.
No, I think he was just the owner or the creator of the town.
Okay. So they've hired her because, this thing's coming in rampaging, killing cattle and all kinds of other stuff, right? And so she just simply takes this and heads out and decides that she's going to go ahead, and she goes out to go find this Gretel Axe monster. And it's there that she keeps getting the sense that there's somebody around her, and she's not really sure, who it is. Eventually, it's revealed that it is Druin, that little rabbit character. And that rabbit character has this very unique ability in that he can turn invisible.
Right.
Yeah, and I was trying to think if we've ever seen anything like this before in Star Wars,
I
where
don't think so.
characters could turn invisible, but
Yeah.
I honestly couldn't remember.
Oh,
Could be
well,
wrong.
what was interesting though is he equated it to a force, like a mind trick type of
Mhm.
thing, where but it didn't seem like that because I mean he's invisible to us, I guess, but he made it seem like it was more of a mind trick that he's able to basically project the aura of invisibility to her. But
Mhm.
I don't know that I completely believe that. At least it wasn't explored quite that way. Because when he gets wrapped up with the Rock Weavers, he's still very much invisible until he turns himself back not invisible. And if you're in that much distress, typically you wouldn't be able to keep doing that type of activity. But I don't know. But did you view this as
Yeah.
more of a force power, or do you view it more as no? It's just kind of a species ability.
I think it's more of a species ability, but I mean, who knows, right? I mean, how they describe this stuff. Maybe the force is what they use as a common, term for people to kind of understand magic versus an ability versus the true force, right?
Right.
It's really hard to say. But he stowed away on her ship because he's been enamored by the Jedi, and we get the backstory of him. It's very quick. Essentially, him and his brother, I think, were captured at some point, and they lived a number of years as kind of like slaves until the Jedi kind of freed them. And since then, he became enamored with the Jedi, and he wants to learn the ways of the Jedi, which is probably the more interesting aspect of his character. And we don't really get a sense of where this is going to go. I'm guessing this is another thread that's going to be told in subsequent sequels here at some point.
Right.
But
And he was, and to
um,
tie it back to the overarching story, him and his
yeah, thank you.
brother they were caught in the Great Disaster in the hyperspace lanes. And so when things were going poorly and they got yanked out of space, his brother put him in an escape pod and jettisoned him out. But this was one of the ships. I don't think they told us what ship they were on, but this was
Mhm.
one of the ships that was destroyed during the Great Disaster. So, and again, he saw what the Jedi were doing, and like, this is where his enamorment from them comes from. And his brother always looked up to them, I believe, and then that type of idea. So, it was just now he's on his own. He's basically orphaned, and it seemed like he was younger. Like the drawing in this was a little bit inconsistent with how young he looked in the escape pod, with being a bit more of maybe a teenager or something to that effect, like when we see him with Yorrick. But again, sometimes the perspectives and the that type of angles on the drawings can be a little misleading. But yeah, so that's kind of where he got enamored with that, but also how he ties in with the greater overall picture of what's going on in the galaxy.
Yeah, and the reason why he gets discovered is he gets caught in a web, right? There's these rock dwellers, which are basically these big rock spiders.
Right.
And she ends up freeing him, saving his life. And this is when all this comes out about why he's why he's stowed away on her ship and why he wants her to train her. And they're kind of having this whole backstory together. And then suddenly she's attacked. They're attacked by Pella. So the little girl decides to attack them, which is kind of bizarre at the time because you're thinking, why in the world is this little girl attacking? And as a part of that, there's a moment there where she's about to fall. Pella, the little girl, is about to fall off the cliff. And what Jonesy was alluding to earlier was Yorrick uses the Force to kind of keep her and hold her, and she's got her kind of suspended in the air. And then she has this flashback of Clias. Like she sees Clias's face right before he dies when he's getting impaled or whatever, right? And that's enough that startles her to the point where she, I guess, loses the ability. She has a disconnect with the Force. Yeah, she loses her focus, right? And suddenly Pella just falls off the side of this cliff, and we have no idea what happens to her. But it really troubles Yorrick at this point. She's really kind of beating herself up about it, and I think it's Druin who's kind of telling her, hey, you did everything you could. You're not a bad person, that kind of thing. But she's not really kind of having any part of it. So they eventually get to the rock spiders, or the rock spiders are probably, I think they attack them.
Yeah.
And we come to find out that the rock spiders are being controlled by the Gretel Axe, and we see the Gretel Axe. You want to try to pull up a picture of this thing?
Absolutely.
It's a pretty huge, cool looking monster that was created.
I've got the cave drawing of it up real fast, so I can get that one up while you're talking.
Yeah. Yeah. So they end up fighting the spiders, and they get buried by a bunch of rubble. There's the cave drawing of it there.
And I'll when we get to the very end, I'll kind of show it the
that sounds good.
Looks like, because there's a whole story with it.
Yep. And so they get buried by all of this rubble, and suddenly the rock spiders start coming out, and they're like freeing them. They're rescued by the spiders, both her and the little girl. So we come to find out that Pella has actually been rescued by the spiders. They are now rescued by the spiders. And it's at that point that Yorrick then decides to mind link with the Gretel Axe. So again, going back to the very first lesson, going back to the lesson that we had in the Rising Storm, that whole mind link with animals and creatures. And it's there she discovers what really happened on this planet. And we'll just kind of talk about it now because it's going to come up. But she finds out, because when you read the comics, you have to go through like half of issue 4 before you realize what actually she got from his mind. All you know is that the third comic ends with her saying, I know now what happened, and this will not stand. And she's standing there like vigilant, like she's going to go seek justice for what happened to the Gretel Axe. Well, it turns out the Gretel Axe is actually two beings. There's the Greta, and then there's the Lax. One is like a really hulking creature, like the one we saw in the cave picture. Oh, there, you can see it right there.
And this is after
Ty's got her hands on.
Yeah, this is after the Rock Weavers have kind of picked them all out, like you were just talking about.
Yeah. And the Lax is like this smaller looking creature that they kind of have like this symbiotic relationship, and that it's really cool. It kind of attaches on the back of its head and its antlers. And so they were separated at some point. And so the Wake people, right? Wake people, they have the Lax imprisoned back at the town. They didn't tell Yorrick this. This is why Pella was so upset, because she didn't want the creatures to be, separated. And the Greta is really been coming through and ravaging the small town and attacking the villagers because it's trying to reunite with the Lax. So we fast forward.
Parents, hide your kids' ears or your eyes for a moment here.
Oh yeah,
it's a little graphic.
That's it, really?
Oh yeah, this is them. This is them joining and healing one another. So the Greta is the giant one on the bottom, and then the lax is the kind of like fits behind the horns of sorts. So that's the
Yeah.
second head there behind it. Yeah, a very
Yeah.
interesting creature though.
Yeah, that's a good point too. They have the ability to heal each other. I don't remember if they healed anybody else
They
though.
healed Pella,
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. It did heal Pella too. So it does have a healing ability of some
which kind of
sort.
leads back to our Q&A session. There's so much force healing going on in the world.
Right. There is a lot of force healing going around the world. Um okay, so they get into they confront the townspeople. There's a moment there where she's stunned. Ty Yorrick is stunned. I mean, she's kind of outnumbered, right? She's trying to take a stand and tell them they need to turn over the lax. They end up stunning her. She wakes up. She's suspended. Oh yeah, there you go. Jonesy's pulled up the image where the Greta is healing Pella after she fell, and I don't know if she died or was just mortally wounded.
So when the townspeople, there was an explosion, right, of rhydonium, and this is where she inhaled fumes and she was unable to speak. And so I believe that the Gretel Axe is healing her entirety, because all of a sudden she can speak right after this in the next frame.
Mhm.
So I think that's what it was. And then, I mean, she was also badly hurt as well, but she wasn't able to speak previously. She was more like grunting ever since that accident.
Yeah. Okay, so getting back to her, Ty Yorrick, she wakes up. She's suspended upside down over like a meat grinder of some sort. They're gonna like grind her into
That was amusing.
pulp. It was, and there's I'm trying to remember what happens at that point. Oh, so then we get the whole reason for them wanting. So right, you're probably asking yourself, so why did they want the lax in the first place, or why did they want this creature in the first place?
Right.
And this is the part that was very interesting because I don't know that I got the good sense of exactly how this works, but somehow you take the horns, you grind the horns up, which I think is what that grinder was for, and then you could use that to make some kind of a potion.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it they said? The potion allows them to protect themselves like a Jedi.
Right. Yeah, it was basically, yeah. So what was his name? Talip, or forgot what his name was, but yeah, he's like, so we don't need the Jedi anymore. I found text from eons ago telling me how to make a potion from Gretel Axe horn, a potion that will make us strong enough to protect the planet from anyone. But it doesn't really say what that's all about. And yeah, they were going to use the grinder because they've got Ty Yorrick suspended from it. They're like, well, we think the bones of a Jedi will make a suitable replacement, which was a little bit amusing. It was very James Bondish type of, or Austin Powers type of, peril of, actually reminded me more of like Kingsman, but whatever.
Yeah. So I guess what I got from that was this creature is force sensitive.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it is, right? It was able to heal. They were going to use the bones. A Jedi's bones could happen as well. This magic potion would suddenly, enable them to protect themselves. I don't, and that's really all we got, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if we'll ever get any more than that, but that was the reason why they were after these creatures, is they were trying to take the horns and grind them down.
Yeah.
So they're just about ready to kill her, and suddenly the Rock Reavers, all the spiders show up. It turns into this big battle, and there's a moment there where the main guy, is confronted by the what was it?
Yeah, the Greta.
The Greta.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Greta's been after. Like, you can tell, like, it wants to kill him, and they don't show us what happens. I presume that it end up killing him, maybe as a revenge, if you will. But definitely, there's a moment there where the Greta's kind of staring him down and is about to eat him. Are you pulling that one up right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a menacing shot. Yeah, you can see it. It just kind of lurks up behind him. You see a bunch of teeth, and Ty's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. You did this, so whatever it wants to do, that's going to be your fate. She doesn't try to save his life, which is not very Jedi-like, but she's not a Jedi either, so that makes complete sense.
Right. And there's like you're saying, we're left to wonder what was going to happen. But I think in the end, the Greta isn't I don't think it ate him. I think it
ate him.
I mean, it's definitely got the whole
Gotta eat
carnage
something.
teeth going on there. Yeah. But
right. So the comic really, that's kind of how it ends. Pella is left there. She's talking about rebuilding and, all that now that things are over. I mean, that town is there as it's a town, it's official town. And she wants to, she needs they're going to need help rebuilding everything. It's a new beginning kind of thing. And then she also tells Druin, hey, why don't you stay here with us? Because he doesn't have anything, right?
Yeah, and she doesn't
And
want
he's
to.
not.
Yeah, she doesn't want him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yorrick doesn't want
So
him. Yeah,
yeah, York does not want him at all. She's pretty. I mean, she's nice to him at times when she needs to be, but for the most part, he's just an annoyance, right? He's getting in the way half the time,
right.
and she really does not want anything to do with him. So, which is all important because the very end of the comic ends with us learning that there's a moment there where Druin was talking using the transmitter that Pela had got originally, right? That she stole from her uncle, who's the guy that died and got eaten by the Greta. She gave that transmitter over to Druin, and Druin has been talking to Kalo or KLO.
KL. Yeah, well, and I think KL actually gave him the bud, like the comm bud that they were using to communicate. I think it's what I had taken it because it was in the bag when Ty gave him the bag of the sack of the Varazene Stones. I believe it was in the bag that KL.
No, I completely missed that. I thought it was a transmitter that she was using.
No, and I kind of thought that too, but when I reread it this afternoon, I think it was very much the combo was in there because yeah, KL sees that Ty Yorrick, she puts on this huge face and that she doesn't want to need anybody, but Ty Yorrick, contrary to what she believes, doesn't know what's best for her, and KL does because she's a droid and she's her best friend, and so but yeah, she wants to find a way for them to accidentally bump into each other at some point in the future because she thinks that Druin is really good for Ty Yorrick.
Yeah, and he's a really good natured person.
He is. He means well.
He means well, right? But to her point, I wouldn't want to train him either. Like that's super annoying. He's too old for the training.
Too old to begin the training.
So, and that's how it ends. So we get, I guess, tease that they will meet again, both Druin and Ty Yorrick at some point because KL's behind this. It says that she's going to continue, so maybe we get more stories with more flashbacks. And there's a moment in there where I think they also say you'll never change. I think it's at the very beginning, and this happens. It's said twice at least in the comic book.
Yeah.
I think it's very clear that she does change. Maybe not in the way in the taken out of context, she definitely certainly changes. But I guess the one question I want to throw at you is just kind of all the characters that we have in the High Republic, and there are a lot of them. There are a lot of Jedi characters out there.
Mm-hmm.
We got this story, like somewhere in Cavan Scott's mind, he felt compelled that I need to tell this story. Right, I need to tell the story of Ty Yorrick and either how she left, why she left the Jedi Order, or the Horns, or Druin, or something. What was it in the story that we are going to see, or what's going to build later on? And I have no doubt that he's going to do this, right? Because when you think about the High Republic and just how interconnected everything is, and there are so many things that happen in one book or in one issue that come up later down the road that sometimes are just kind of like slight, winks that,
right.
The story's not built on them,
right?
But they're good callbacks for anybody that's kind of really invested in this whole storyline. But what is it that you think came out, or why this story had to be told? Why focus on Ty Yorrick of all the other Jedi? Why didn't we get Avar Chris's background, or Elzar Mann's background, or Stellan Gios, or any of else? It was Ty of all people.
Well, I think in some respect we've got some of their backstories already, and what we got with Ty in Rising Storm was just so unique and different. And we've got a couple of I'm going to use the word factions of Jedi, or kind of we have one who's left the Order. We have some who are seekers now, and that have they're drawn to these different paths that's not necessarily part of the Jedi Order. And so I think some of these is just exploring each one of these unique, just two or three or four unique perspectives on it that are not associated directly with the Jedi and what happens as a result. And I think her character was just so compelling in the book that I think when you write that stuff down, you're like, we've got a really good character right here. We've got a character that we can really explore. She's unique. She's different. She is going to have a story in the main arc as well. And so she can kind of cross those boundaries of some of the material that we have. And I think it's an idea of how does one leave the Order? And we've already got a lot of speculation about, is Keeve Trennis the one who is, one of the Jedi who have left the Order, and that type of thing, right? But this is another person who she left under a certain set of circumstances that weren't necessarily clear to us what all happened in between. And I think for them to flesh that out and really give us an idea of what that looks like, because maybe we're going to see another aspect of the Jedi that fell short, or maybe we're going to see that, no, this is just the the personal damage you experience something so severe, even the best of intentions. And we saw this with Tempest Runner. I think you brought up a good example. You see a lot of parallels with Cavan Scott stories, with Tempest Runner and Duke of Jedi Lost, and now this of these stories where you have a again, we saw this with the Bogan collection, but we also saw it. You pointed it out earlier with the way that Lorna D was represented too in some of the flashbacks. But you just get these really consistencies with his writing where the characters want to get pulled back and forth, and you're going to continue to explore like the ideas that he has within them, even if you don't necessarily come back to the idea specifically for a while. So is Druin going to be a major character in the long run? No. Might he show up in High Republic Adventures as the story goes on? Yeah, I think that's a very real possibility, especially if Cavan Scott's involved with any of that stuff or with DJO or anything like that. And so I think those are again consistencies, and we know the authors, and Cavan Scott in particular, love going back to their characters, especially the ones that they feel like they really created themselves. I mean, we know this with Charles Soule, right? Charles Soule feels very linked with the Knights of Ren in particular, right? And those types of characters that you built them, you created them, and you know all the things that they're going on because they're exactly what you want them to be. And I think the audience has responded to it. So I think it was a story that definitely needed to come out, and it needs to continue to be developed in order to really get a better overall picture of that and get a more complete story on it. Because as of right now, I'm not satisfied with where it ended, but again, it feels like we're going to get more. We'll just have to see what capacity that is, because I don't want Druin, I think, in Fallen Star necessarily, right? I'd rather that continue to focus more on Ty and Elzar from that respect, rather than her taking on a Padawan, coming back into order too quickly, and we have another Vanestra Row type of thing going on.
Yeah.
So, which is another character we don't really know what's going on with either. But
yeah,
a lot of characters, a lot of different angles and go on this stuff.
There really are, and to be clear, like I'm not complaining. Like I actually really like Ty Yorrick, and I like the fact that we got her background. I'm just wondering why her, and it spoils me, right? Because now I want the backgrounds on when all the Padawans or all the Jedi that we know and love today were Padawans. I want to see what that was like. I want to see the Avar Kriss and Elzar Mann, budding relationship that they had when they were Padawans, and or sorry, was it Stellan? Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was right.
No, it was Elzar.
I want to see the dynamic that was Stellan there too, going like, what are you guys doing?
Right.
There's a lot of story that like you said, to be told there. So hopefully we get all that. But yeah, it's a good comic. I mean, if you're into the High Republic, you should do yourself a favor and pick it up. It is all right out of the High Republic. There's a lot of references in there. It's all the same stuff that you like because it's all the same writers, which has been the case for all of the comic books, honestly. Can't recommend them enough if you're a big High Republic fan or enjoying the stories. You have to do yourself a favor and go pick these up.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're doing. I'm trying to remember if they're doing a collection of this one. Usually, what they'll do is they'll bundle up stories into a trade paperback.
I'm sure
so like a volume of this or a volume of that. And I can't remember if this is one that they don't know if they're going to do yet. But anyway, a lot of times though, once these comics have been on the shelves for a while, you can pick them up at $2 or $3 instead of $5 or $6. And then if you're a Marvel Unlimited subscriber, or Comixology Unlimited subscriber, usually within a few months these things will be in there too. So if you want to be patient, about 3 months. Some go a little bit longer than that, I've noticed, but usually they're about in that range. But anyway,
it used to be 6 months. It used to be 6, and then they made a change earlier this year that starting on this day, all comics would be 3 months, and I think they're working through the back catalog. So that's probably what we're seeing.
That makes sense.
Anyways,
cool.
Yeah. But either way, it's a good point. If you have that subscription, which is really useful.
Well, and like we said, I mean, we've kind of shown some of the art on the screen, and I do want to pull up one more here before we wrap up with just when you think about the picture that captures Ty Yorrick and how awesome.
Is it the annoyed?
No,
it's my favorite.
It's one of the very first ones.
There's one where she's like super annoyed and she's being sarcastic. I think when she gets back to town and talking to the guys that wanted her to bring in the Gundart. That's like my favorite one. But
here we go.
All right, Jonesy's pulling this up now. I'm blocking people that just keep spamming our YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's a little
in case you're wondering. That's going to happen at time to time.
There you go. So like this is the art that like when I got to this page, I mean the cover art has been fantastic too. But when you get to this, and then there's another one when the rock weavers are out there, where she's
Mhm.
got the lightsaber slashing. But it's this type of drawing and colors and everything that just really suck you in and draw you into this type of comic. And this is why I like comics, because you get this type of artistry and work. Yeah. So
Yep.
if you wonder why I get so into it, these are the types of things. The artwork is just fantastic. I wish I could draw. I
If you
can't.
wonder why he spends hundreds of dollars every week on comics, this is why.
You keep that between us, son. Yeah.
Sure, and the thousands of people listening to the show right now.
Right.
But
Right. Yeah.
whatever.
But
Okay. Well, I think we'll leave it there on Jonesy's Secret. I guess final thoughts on the comic. Like I said, it's highly recommended. Go pick it up. Good writing, good artwork. I think it to be determined on just what we can extrapolate from the story or what's going to play into future stories, if anything. But as a standalone story, I thought it was pretty good, and it is a callback for me personally to the Marvel comics. So if you grew up with those in the 70s and 80s, it's very similar in that
Right.
same vein. So what about you?
yeah, and the backstory on Yorrick, I think that was the best. That was my favorite aspect of it, aside from the artwork itself. And again, some of the parallels and the consistencies with what we've seen in other material from Cavan Scott, which is just a really fun idea to explore, that these things are always happening across generations and whatever else. And there's always this lure of basically kids getting into trouble, but what happens whenever it doesn't all turn out okay. And so that was the part I really liked, and I hope that we do get more of that story, because I really do think there's probably some really good gems to pull out of that and to do more with, as we fit her more into what's coming next in the actual current material, what's to come here in the next few months.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll end it there. You want to give a shout out to everybody that joined? We had some new people. in here
Yeah,
too,
we sure
so-
did. We had Chris, Risk, Steph. We had Ash. We had Mandy was here earlier. Twan. Goodness, who else?
Lauren.
Oh yeah, Lauren was on here too. Yeah, Music Train. Haven't seen Music Train in a while, so that was cool to see him come back. And we had a dozen or so people popping on and off throughout the show. So we do appreciate everyone. Even if you're a lurker and don't want to comment, that's totally cool. We appreciate you showing up and supporting the show. Once again, if you would like to listen to the Patreon show, make sure you're part of Discord, earglemedia.com/Discord. In the next few minutes here, we'll go ahead and post a link. It's about 10:30 p.m. right now, so maybe we'll start about 10:40, 10:45, something like that. So we'll get that posted, and we'll get you a link over there if you want to join us for the show. We do a little show and tell, and then we are going to talk about Star Wars Eclipse, the new video game that we got a cinematic trailer for. So
Yes. Hey, Rob just chimed in too. Thanks, Rob.
oh, hey, Rob.
Yeah. All right. We'll leave it there, end it there. Before we go, last thing, I just want to give a shout out to one of my closest friends, longtime friends, James Fisher, and congratulate him and his wife on their new baby boy. His name is Nash. He goes by James Nash. But the funny thing is, at one point, almost 9 months ago to this day, I went out to have lunch with him up in Dallas, and I asked him when he told me that he was, expecting, that they were expecting. I said, "So what are the names that you guys have considered?" He said, "Well, I think I've convinced her that Vader is a name that she's willing to, like, she's never seen Star Wars."
Oh.
So he had convinced her that Vader was going to be a name that was on the table at one point. So as all things in, pre-production, it was probably just concept.
Yeah.
Right. Just means father. Actually, I told him that he didn't know that was the case, but,
really?
but no, they settled on Nash, which is probably for the best, but we're this close, man, this close to having a James Vader Fisher. So,
yeah.
But congratulations to you guys, and
congrats,
all
bro.
the best with the baby. Which is wonderful. First child. So
yeah, congrats, bro.
I'm going to roll credits again. Carol, sorry, you're not in here. Ash, you're in here. So finally you get to see your name. We'll see you guys in just a little bit for the Patreon show, and we'll tease up what we're going to be doing on the show prior to, the last show before we get into the Book of Boba Fett, because it's already here. So we'll see you in a minute.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.